Jesse, cue it up. Everybody in their places. It's time to go.
Are we rolling? Yeah, we're rolling. Okay, let's get it done, everybody. Let's go. Hey, Reagan, how's my hair? Is it okay?
Poxy, they can't see you.
All right, come on, let's toots, people. Poxy, start on page 4. Get the
Here we
lines
are.
right this time.
Right, I got it this time, I swear.
4, 3.
Come on. It's time for the Ghost of Hollywood.
All right, wall crawlers, it's that time again. Welcome to episode 51 of The Ghost of Hollywood. I'm Poxy Leonard here with Miss Reagan, and tonight we have director Michael Tiddes in house to discuss his brand new film, the official reboot of the Scary Movie franchise, all that. Yeah, we're gonna talk about it all, baby.
That's right. After years of working extensively alongside Marlon Wayans in a variety of films, Mike was chosen to maintain the helm as the Wayans entered a new chapter in their work on the Scary Movie franchise, picking up where they left off following the release of Scary Movie 2 25 years ago.
And that leaves us with plenty to talk about, given this Scary Movie, the one that Mike just directed, has crushed box office expectations and driven renewed interest in the spoof franchise that started them all, baby. Literally.
We'll also revisit some of Mike's early work directing Marlon Wayans in films such as Haunted House or Naked, and discuss how their working relationship evolved over time and where that shows up or presents itself in their work.
And of course, Simon and Lennox are back at it with another wild segment of the cinematic dumpster fire. Yo, wall crawlers, have you ever heard of the story of the kidnapping of Korean filmmakers Choi and Shin? What about the making of Pulgasari? Either way, you're in for a treat.
And I'm Miss Reagan with Poxy Leonard. Stay tuned because when we return, Michael Tiddes will join us. You're listening to The Ghost of Hollywood. We'll be back after these messages.
We will, right after. Right after. And before we were here, too.
Interested in television or movies?
Then check out The Ghost of Hollywood for the best in cinema-related podcast at theghostofhollywood.com or wherever you get your podcast.
Welcome back to The Ghost of Hollywood. I'm Poxy Leonard here with Ms. Reagan, and joining us is director Michael Tiddes, who is here to discuss his recent work directing the latest Scary Movie installment. Now, Tiddes is also known for his multiple collaborations with Marlon Wayans and Rick Alvarez, who have co-written and produced several of the films Mike's directed, including his debut with the horror comedy A Haunted House, which was released in 2013. Now, all that said, I'd like to welcome Mike to the show. Thank you for joining us on The Ghost of Hollywood. How are you?
Thank you. I'm good, man. Thanks for having me.
So, you've directed extensively in the spoof and comedy genre for the majority of your career as a film director. What about your background led you to work in comedy? And how did this lead to your working relationship with the Wayans family?
Yeah, my background, I guess I've always been somewhat of a class clown or, a guy who likes a good joke. I started off like many, people who don't know anyone in LA, is just PAing and trying to find a job anywhere, you can. But I was lucky enough to land a job as an assistant to Rick Alvarez, who was the producer and writing partner for the Wayans. And that introduced me to Sean, Keenan, and Marlon. And, working with those guys was just an amazing opportunity and allowed me to kind of get into the lab and watch the mad scientists work and see how they really put together a comedy and how they add their little special sauce to it. And we really just connected, immediately. And from there, our relationship just kind of, became cemented in laughing together as much as possible.
When did you start getting in the directing game with them? When did that all start to play out? That's pretty transcendent in your friendship there. They're like, all right, we gotta get Mike directing some stuff now.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing. I always wanted to be a director. So even working as an assistant, it was just an opportunity to really watch these guys do what they did. And I was directing everything and anything I could get my hands on while I was working for them. I did a short film called Crawl Space, which was great. It was a horror thriller short film. And I got introduced to other comedy actors and people who are working on their movies. And I actually teamed up with this guy, Atheon Crockett, who's absolutely hilarious, very talented actor, comedian. And we started making comedy sketch videos together on YouTube. And this is like 20 years ago, YouTube, when no one knew what to do with YouTube. One of our sketch videos, we did it. It came out. It got 1 million hits in 24 hours, and we ended up on the news. That's how long ago this was. And from there, we just kept making things. And I realized early on that it was just all about creating material. So I was just constantly directing and showing the guys, like, hey, check out this, this music video I did. Check out this comedy sketch I did. Check out this short film. And they were always just watching and always supportive and giving me notes. And we just kept evolving. And it got to the point where Afion and I took our sketch videos and we ended up selling a sketch show to Fox called it was the Afion Crockett in the Flow with Jamie Foxx. And the guys were extremely proud. And Keenan actually like signed my DGA form that got me into the Directors Guild of America. And I went off and directed this TV show for Fox. And right about at that time, we had started talking about doing a Paranormal Activity spoof. And the idea was that they wanted to do this on their own. You know what I mean? Like pay for it. I would shoot it, direct it, edit it. I would do everything because that's what I was doing back then. And they knew that I was able to do a lot with a little. So I was kind of perfect for this opportunity. And that came around, and the script they finished writing it. It was excellent, and it ended up being so good that somebody wanted to give us $1.5 million to make it, and it became suddenly a little bit bigger than we thought it was. And that was what Haunted House became. And we went and shot that movie in like 18 days in one location. That was my first, feature film directorial debut. And that movie came out and did like 60 something million worldwide. And it was just an amazing experience.
It's a pretty long film too. I mean, you shot it over 18 days. So you all were like pulling some time getting it done then, even like, especially if you're running on a tight budget.
Well, to be quite honest, that was like a micro budget movie that was shot extremely quick. I mean, you could take something like, like a White Chicks. I think that was like a 55-day shoot.
Yeah.
So this at $1.5 million, 18 days, it was very fast actually for, a feature film.
No, that's what I mean. Like you were like flying on it. That's what I was saying. If I misunderstood, like that's what I was saying. Like you guys had to put in time. Like you were probably working like 12, 15-hour days to get it done.
Oh yeah. No, we were running and gunning, man. We were going so quick. It was all about, executing at a high level and just being able to know exactly what we wanted to do, or what I wanted to do really was, capture that kind of Paranormal Activity, found footage style of filming. And we had to go quick. You don't have a lot of money, you don't have time. And that's really, the bigger the budget, you get the toys, you get to support, and most importantly, you get time. And we had none of that on our movie.
Working on films like Scary Movie presents an opportunity to direct various aspects of a comedic performance. What about this broad approach helps with creativity when directing comedians or comedic actors so that their performances land with audiences?
Well, I think working with comedy actors is always just an exciting experience because each of them bring their own very unique experience and perspective to comedy. So you want to give them an opportunity and kind of a platform to run with that. You want to be able to support them, create an environment that feels comfortable so that they can play, and then, use what they do, which is, be funny to the best of their ability. And so you give them opportunities to just kind of like get out there and do their thing.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense. Now, like, turn into Scary Movie for a minute. So definitely a lot of history on and off the screen. And I know you were just on Raiders of the Lost podcast, and you've had to discuss this a bit with the IP and stuff. But not as in depth here. But the Wayans, you've collaborated with obviously very extensively, and we've discussed that. But they haven't been involved with the franchise of Scary Movie since the second installment was released in 2001. Now, that all changed a few years ago in 2024 when they went back to the table with Miramax for a reboot of the Scary Movie franchise. Now, at what point during these conversations did you become involved with the new Scary Movie film, and when was it decided you would direct?
The guys, Marlon, he gave me a call and told me that they had the IP back and that they were writing and to get ready. And from there, I was in the middle of finishing up another film that I was working on. So I was just excited. I was like, let's go, man. And then immediately, once they finished writing the script, they sent it to me. And then I get it, and I start giving notes and just kind of start giving my opinion on how we can shape the film and how I'd like to shoot it and ideas on how strategically we would shoot the film. But it just starts right there in the development process. And, we start talking about, different characters we want to bring back and, looking and starting and hiring a casting director to start this search for these new, younger, actors that are going to be kind of be handed the torch in this movie.
Yeah, I mean, and a lot of the function of a film like Scary Movie, is a spoof or present the comedy using similar scenes or characters or concepts from obviously a lot of big films. And in this one, you've used, of course, as with the others, there's a lot of classics, and then there's some of the contemporaries. So, what is some of the biggest challenges in making the comedy land effectively for audiences that are less familiar with material references that you're using?
Yeah, this one was a unique one because we're getting to bring back these legacy characters from 20 years ago that, legacy audiences and fans of the franchise know so well. So a lot of it, strategically for us was we wanted to deliver, the Wayne's authentic comedy from the part one and part two. And we wanted to give audiences what they remembered and how the franchise started, this bold, unapologetic, kind of edgy R-rated humor that the Wayans bring when they do a movie like this. And the other piece of the puzzle was, of course, connecting and hoping to introduce Scary Movie to a whole new generation of audiences that maybe haven't been able to go to the theaters and see a Scary Movie. I mean, the last one was 5, and that was like 13 or 14 years ago. But seeing a movie like Scary Movie with an audience in a theater is just like a totally different type of experience. It's like you get in there and those theaters can get rowdy, and it's just a lot of fun. So it was a great opportunity. Yeah, it was just a great opportunity to connect generations over a piece of IP that's been around for 20 years and really kind of introduce, like I said, a whole new audience, hopefully, to the feeling and the excitement of seeing a Scary Movie in theaters.
Yeah, I mean, it works that way. That's why I was interested in asking, because say Reagan's I'm 37 and Reagan's 17. So I saw the first one when it came out. I remember watching Scream 3 in theaters and seeing the trailers for the first one, and being like, oh,
Yeah.
So there's this time kind of between us where it was fun to watch it together in the theaters because there were some things that hit harder for her that I was understanding, and then I was like, oh, I'm old, and then there were other things that hit harder for me where she's like, what's going on, and then they fused together, so it was pretty good. It seemed to touch bases with a lot of generations, so it's across the board, it's effective.
Yeah, there's a lot of layers in the movie. There's a lot of callbacks to the originals. So if you're an original fan and you really know those movies, you're going to get something out of it. There's a lot of pop culture. We really try to pierce the zeitgeist with culture right now, and a lot of that culture is on the internet. So we are really trying to help, or we were trying to facilitate a way to really kind of connect with younger audiences also, to give them humor and make sure that they were enjoying the film. And on top of that, there's just a mirage of Easter eggs when it comes to the different references that we're creating, and all the different horror films. I mean, I think for hardcore horror fans, they get something even deeper out of the movie because there's a lot of visual and just even sound design, little Easter eggs in there for everybody. So I know a good buddy of mine, he's a super hardcore horror guy, and he just loved some of these scenes that we were parodying because he just felt like he was transported back to the original and was getting a lot out of it.
Now, I've read Scary Movie was filmed entirely in Atlanta, Georgia, in Tyler Perry's studio. How long did you work in principal photography, and what lenses and tech did you find was a must-have to capture the scenes you shot?
It's a great question. Yeah, we shot this whole movie in Atlanta, Georgia, at the Tyler Perry film studio, which is just a great, studio. And immediately, I sat down with my production team, and especially my DP Terry Stacy. And for me, it was very important to kind of evoke the original horror films that we were parodying. I wanted the long leg moments to feel like you were watching Long Legs. I wanted, if we were doing Get Out, I wanted you to feel transported back to Get Out and have this kind of subliminal connective tissue visually to the original movies, which, the hope there is that you're really kind of feeling this familiar moment. I mean, that's what Scary Movie 1 did to me when I watched it for the very first time, 20-something years ago. It ruined Scream. I watched that movie, and then years later, Scream would come on, and I'd be like, oh, this is that that movie. I love this movie. And then I started watching it and I'd be like, oh, wait, this is the boring one. I need to put the funny one on. And I'd put scary movie on. I'm like, I need to see, I want to see Dawson, come up through the wrong window and all the like hilarious moments that that movie had. And so I wanted to really evoke the same thing with this one so that you were watching these movies and feeling like you knew what was going to happen. And then, of course, we would surprise you with a joke or pull the rug out from you. And suddenly you were in a K-pop, fever dream and going, where the hell am I?
The K-pop thing was wild.
Yeah, it was wild. It was it just felt like a perfect, opportunity to bring in another, kind of horror comedy that was, obviously doing huge business around the world. And the song, of course, was, winning awards and just massive, and just felt like what a great opportunity to have fun with, this piece of material. And to get Marlon to sing and to do an animated moment in the movie just added a new texture visually to the film that really excited me. But to do some of these, different parodies like we do John Wick, immediately I was talking to my DP and saying, listen, we need to go. I want to shoot this anamorphic. We got T lenses. We went out there and we shot the whole thing anamorphic. We really kind of just gave it the same visual kind of tone and edge that John Wick had. And that's what we wanted to do. We wanted to push each of those scenes to kind of, evoke those original kind of feelings.
Now that makes sense. Now with so you shot that anamorphic. So that's a lot of wide coverage. I was actually going to ask about that because I know, like, say, a lot of the lensing, whether or not you're going long or if you're lighting certain scenes a certain way, is really significant. Like, I know lighting was probably really critical to that John Wick scene because of the way that the color works in the original film, or maybe some of the positionality of some of the sequences that you're working on. But how do you manage pacing for scenes with heavy special effects or choreography? And like, what were some of the more difficult tasks set before you to pull off some of these sequences, such as that beheading or like the John Wick sequences?
Yeah, pacing was definitely something that immediately from the beginning of the movie, from starting conceptualizing the idea of the movie, I wanted it to feel explosive. I wanted you to feel like you were on this ride. With parody films, it's about, how many jokes can you get in there a minute? It's less about necessarily story because everyone's going to this knowing that, this movie is making fun of other previous movies. We all know the plots of these movies. Plus, it's a classic slasher movie, so it's very simplistic in its storytelling. Where it's Ghostface is back in town. He's killing kids to get to the original OGs. Stay alive. That's literally like the plot of Scream and most slasher films. And so I wanted to, give the movie this propulsion and this kind of energy and this momentum so that, we were never getting bored, and created this, ability to kind of find an organic connective tissue to tie together all these different horror films into kind of one overall universe of scary movie. And to do that, each scene had its different challenges. The John Wick one you're bringing up there, that was a very challenging scene, and it being just so physical. We had an amazing stunt team, Steve Brixey, my stunt coordinator, and all the stunt players that went into that scene. They were all very talented. They worked really hard. We worked on choreographing that fight sequence and going in and shaping it and really trying to achieve a John Wick-esque type style of fight, and then also capturing it with a wider style where John Wick, some of the cool in that movie is the fact that he'll do a series of moves, one after another without fast cuts. So we were trying to achieve that, and also, just create the excitement and the power that you get from those movies. And it was excellent. And Anna, Ferris, she had never really even held a gun before. So it was extremely challenging for her to pull this off. But she was a trooper, man. She went in there, just no fear, super courageous, went in and busted her ass and made it look amazing, made it look easy, really. She just crushed it.
So with the long takes, like, you really probably had to, blocking this was critical then. I'm assuming that would have been like the biggest part of that scene would have been blocking the whole
thing. Yeah. When you're working out, your choreography, you're also shooting it on, like an iPhone, and you're trying to work out, the camera blocking already to kind of capture some of the imagery you're hoping to get on set that day. And then, of course, once you're on set, you walk through the whole choreography of the fight, And as you're doing that, you have your camera team watching, and I'm just in there like showing them, like, I want to hit this and I want to pull out here and I want to capture this moment. And you just try to like, break it down and dissect it piece by piece until you have all the moments you want visually in your mind.
Yeah, all the gimbals, the marks, everything. Yeah, those shots are super finicky. It's you did well with it. Now, when dealing with the styles and themes of various other films, be it narrative or visual, what are some particular movies or directors you've actually learned the most from when focusing on or spoofing their work?
Oh man, there's so much to learn from each of them. I mean, each movie we were parodying, I was trying to, like I said, evoke that visual connective tissue. And a lot of like when you get into Smile, what you notice is they do a great job of kind of building the tension in what you don't see from kind of either the person's point of view, and they do a lot of cleans. There's not a lot of overs. Everything is very close. Everything is very, very wide, and it's very slow, kind of hinges left to right. And, she's there on the bed and she looks over her shoulder, and then the camera just slowly, pans to the left to reveal something. But it's so slow that you're like, oh my God, what is she looking at? And then, of course, you see it and it slowly pans back. And so I was trying to evoke moments like that in the Smile scene, shooting it clean, being very close, wide lenses, and doing those kind of pans just like they did. Of course, I can't take as much time as they do because they're a straight on, thriller horror. It's all about the tension and what you don't see. And for me, I'm still trying to create these moments that are still exciting and funny. So I had to go a little quicker, but like, in Get Out, it was another similar situation where we have Ghostface and Marlon's character Shorty sitting down and doing that classic kind of hypnotizing scene from the original. And, they start with kind of, off center, like clean 3/4 shots and not a lot of movement. But then once the scene really gets into it, it's just straight on cleans and slow pushes into very close-ups. So I was mimicking some of those things to just evoke that kind of style. And you start to really kind of take apart what they do, like Zach Krieger and, the way he shot weapons was just so just flawless. Like he's so good at what he does. I mean, he's like one of these directors that he's trying to show you something. I mean, there's one shot in that movie which I love, and it starts out wide and we're going in towards a window and you're kind of looking into the house, and there's like a little hole through the blinds, and he's just slowly getting closer and closer and closer to that window and the blinds. And as an audience member, just the want to see inside that window just continues to build as he holds and he just slowly pushes in. And then, you finally get to that hole and it's too dark to see. And then he cuts away and you're like, oh my God. He showed me absolutely nothing, but it made me want to see everything so badly. And that is just a perfect display of like how you can create tension in a movie. And I love that about what he does.
And I'm Miss Reagan here with Poxy Leonard, and it's time to pass things off to Simon and Lennox to hear the latest segment of the Cinematic Dumpster Fire. So stay tuned because we'll be right back to continue our conversation with Michael Tiddes.
When it comes to making movies, anything can go wrong. And tonight we're here to discuss that on the Cinematic Dumpster Fire.
What's up, everybody? I'm your host Simon here with my man Lennox, and hopefully you've been enjoying Poxy and Reagan's conversation with director Michael Tiddes. And while they break for a second, it's time for another terrifying tale from the depths of cinematic hell. So strap in, because tonight we'll discuss the story behind the kidnapping of South Korean filmmakers Shin Sang-ok and Choi Yoon-hee by the North Korean government of Kim Jong-il, right here on a brand new segment of the Cinematic Dumpster Fire. Now, let's start with the rewind to Hong Kong circa 1978 and provide a little backlog before we jump into the core of the story. After a decade of work with their company Shin Film during the 1960s, filmmaking power couple Shin Sang-ok and Choi Yoon-hee would divorce after Shin's extramarital affairs were brought to her attention. This led to a decline in both their film careers, with Choi struggling or unable to find work, and Shin having his film license revoked by the South Korean government following a series of non-compliance issues. Eventually, Choi traveled to Hong Kong on a speculative offer to direct a feature film there, and arrived at the beginning of 1978 after the offer extended beyond film to running an entire performing academy. Turns out, however, that it was just a ruse, and the plan in store for her was much more elaborate than expected. Quick rundown for a second. as we turn our attention north toward Pyongyang and late dictator Kim Jong-il. Now, without driving into all the detail behind his relevance here, I'll summarize by saying the dictator had dreams beyond running the country, and those were largely vested in filmmaking. Housing a personal archive of nearly 15,000 films, Kim aspired to reinvigorate the North Korean film industry, despite the heavy restrictions and control imposed by his family.
So, he hatched a plan to kidnap some successful filmmakers and make use of their abilities to advance his filmmaking agenda. And for target 1, he chose Choi, which is largely believed to have been a way to bait Shin into Hong Kong to search for her, where he would be kidnapped and put to work making films in North Korea.
To further, the North Korean government propagated heavily that the two had left on their own and were using the opportunity to continue their careers making films. All this despite the fact that Shin had started a new family back home and had made attempts to escape while in captivity, which resulted in his imprisonment.
And remember that huge film archive I was telling you about? Well, Kim had Shin and Choi study a mandatory 4 films a day, and then had them provide feedback to him based on what they'd observed.
Let me back up a second to touch on one major point in the timeline. So, while Shin and Choi were both kidnapped in 1978, it wouldn't be until 1983 that the North Koreans would reunite the two and have them begin working together again on creating feature films for the country. And off to work they went, reinvigorating the Shin Company under the orders of Kim Jong-il to create their first film for North Korea entitled An Emissary of No Return. Shin chose this title largely in collaboration with Il so that he could try to appease him, in hopes of being allowed to travel abroad where he could possibly escape, but that plan was foiled quickly.
Yep, Il said it was fine to travel abroad, but limited Shin and Choi to the Eastern Bloc to inhibit their opportunity of any escape. After this film was completed, a second would follow, which Choi also appeared in, called Love, Love, My Love. Beyond the forced production, Love, Love, My Love garnered a great deal of attention in North Korea upon its release for the first on-screen kiss ever seen in that country. I know, pure chaos, right?
And then there was the third film, Runaway, notable for the exploding train. And it's notable because Shin initially couldn't figure out how to approach the scene, neither by effect nor model design. So he kiddingly asked Kim Jong-il for a real train. And guess what? He got one. So he loaded it up with explosives and did the damn thing. Now that's pure chaos, baby.
Then there was Breakaway, which little is known about. Then the critically acclaimed film Salt, that saw Choi win an award for Best Actress. And then The Tale of Shim Chong, before we get to their last work for North Korea, and that is the infamous Pulgasari. A monster movie capitalizing on the Godzilla concept, Pulgasari was one of the most expensive films ever produced by North Korea.
And you'd have no clue if you watched it. Yeah, it's about like that. But what's more significant is their escape from captivity before its international release, which held the premiere for like 12 years until it was finally screened outside of North Korea for the first time in the 90s in Tokyo, Japan. As for the escape itself, the North Koreans sent Shin and Choi abroad to Vienna to search for someone to fund their next film. Instead, the two managed to escape, literally outpacing their captors through vehicular traffic, where they pleaded asylum at the nearest US embassy.
Rewinding for a second to help the facts a bit, note that Shin and Choi had actually taken to the task of recording their interactions with Kim Jong-il to prove their captivity to the public after they escaped. This countered the North Korean government's statement that the two had come along looking for opportunity and hadn't been held against their will at all, but history played out.
The couple would ultimately remarry and remain together for the rest of their lives, residing in the US for several years before returning to South Korea, where Shin passed away in 2006 and Choi in 2018. And there you have it, the story of Shin and Choi.
Oh, the nightmares that film, love, and a love for film can produce. Am I right or am I right, Simon?
Right. And until next time, I'm your host Simon here with my man Lennox, and we hope you enjoyed the latest tale from our cinematic dumpster fire. Stay tuned for more action, because Poxy and Reagan will return to continue their conversation with director Michael Tiddes right after these messages.
See you next time, everybody.
Interested in television or movies?
Then check out The Ghost of Hollywood for the best in cinema-related podcast at theghostofhollywood.com or wherever you get your podcast.
With the latest installment of Scary Movie, you worked with a smaller budget than the earlier films had. Now, with such a large returning cast and a variance in coverage, necessary to make the film, what became essential to keeping line costs in balance throughout production?
Well, for one, to answer I'm doing a lot in this movie, so I had to really be a chameleon as far as, being able to shift from kind of one style to the other style, which is part of, I think, the fun in these types of movies. You get to play, in a lot of different sandboxes. But, this movie is all about managing, time, like you said, the money. And so we had a smaller budget. It was really being strategical about finding locations that gave us more than one look. It kind of brings you back to micro budget filming, or anybody starting out, you have no money, you're doing a music video, The key is to find a location that gives you 5 or 6 or 7 different looks so that you can stay in one place and you can move around to all these different, kind of places in that one location, but get different, feels or different tones. And, the minute you're like, hey, we have to go across town and pack up all these trucks, you're screwed. I mean, that's where the difficulty
Starts
in,
eating your time.
creating. Yeah, you're now spending 5 hours, packing trucks and moving, and you're not shooting. And that just kills you when it comes to movies like this. So it's about like finding a way, finding a location that gives you all the looks you need. And that always comes down to having a great team, from the production designers to the set dressers to a DP that can see your vision and say, okay, here's ways we can elevate this. Here's ways we can pull this off. If we're doing this, trailer shot in a trailer park, what other pieces of the movie can we, tie on to that day that we can pull off? Well, hey, there's a dirt road, so we can shoot this driving sequence in the beginning in the morning, and then we can go to the trailer and we can shoot the interior first because the sun's, at 12 o'clock. And then we'll shoot the exterior arrival and leaving exit at around 6 or 7 when the sun's going down, because that's going to give us the best kind of lighting for that moment. So it's really strategical. And, at the end of the day, I think it comes with just 10,000 hours. You do this enough till you learn all these little tricks, and that allows you to be very effective and efficient in your shooting. And you can create strategies that elevate the film, visually at the end. So you can take what seems like a short amount of time and not a lot of money and make it look like you had all the time you ever needed and you had $1 billion.
What about Scary Movie was meant to stand out or work differently than the previous installments? And did that play out as anticipated?
I think what we wanted to do was bring back authentic Wayans comedy. And I do think that we achieved that in a big way. I mean, having the Wayans involved just brings this unique perspective into the zeitgeist of culture and pop culture and politics and everything that's going on. We are and always have been equal opportunity offenders, and we're going to go after everyone, everywhere, at any time. And so I think that was, something that made this one stand out, maybe a little different from the others. And we definitely wanted to set out to, evoke that originality from the guys who created the franchise, have now had it back and are, giving it that life that we all remember the originals having. And I think we did a great job doing that. It was really fun to work with, all the guys. They wrote a great script, and to have Sean and Marlon back playing, Shorty and Ray was fantastic. And then to incorporate other Wayanses into the movie, like Kim Wayans and Damon Wayans Jr. and, even their kids, was just a fantastic, kind of gift to give.
And they have like not aged a day either. It's like 20 years.
Yeah, those guys guys age backwards. It's crazy.
Yeah, I need that vitamin intake for sure, so I can stay alive like that. No.
How involved in post-production are you? And what do you find to be some of the most pressing parts of that process to secure the film's success?
Yeah, post-production is, kind of my island. It really ends up coming down to the first, director's cut is just me and an editor in a room for, 3 months, cutting this film down and shaping it to what we think is going to be the best movie. And I'm very involved with all the points and the processes of this. While you're doing that, you're also working on, hiring other members of the movie, like your composer and your visual effects teams and, your animators and, the colorists and all the different people that come and they bring, different facets to the film that are extremely important, from sound mixing to all those pieces. So you're juggling a lot of balls, and at the same time, you're, trying to cut this movie and get it into a running time that feels right, that feels like it's the right amount of time. It gives you all the jokes that we want. It gets the story across. It keeps your attention the whole time, and it's exciting. So you're working through this process, and then as you get to your director's cut, you're now showing it to your producers and and Marlon and the Wayans and the studios, and they get to see it for the first time as what you intended to be the film, and then they give you notes, and from there, the process just continues. You know what I mean? You're just kind of chipping away at the film and elevating it piece by piece. It's funny. I always start because you watch the movie and there's all these things that bother me. And then as the process goes, it's just like less and less things. And finally, to get to the last 2 or 3 times I watched the movie, I'm like, yeah, nothing's standing out. Nothing's bothering me. I know we're there. I know this is what I wanted to do, and this is great. We're almost finished.
Oh, that's nice. So, like, what about tell me about your experience working with editor John Swartz and how your time together on Scary Movie, played out to the final cut.
Yeah, John was great. He's a fantastic editor, a great guy. Just was a pleasure to work with and spend a lot of long hours in a room together. It was just him and I, like I said, chipping away at this movie. John had done Let's Be Cops and a lot of other really funny comedy films, and we did an interview together and just kind of connected. And he's just a really funny guy and very smart, had really great ideas, and was just a fantastic editor to work with. He's very fast and collaborative and always willing to try something. And we were definitely experimenting along the way, finding different techniques and finding different inspiration too. That's what's so great about post. You have to go into a movie having a vision and you prep that vision, and then you go out and you capture it during production. And then when you get into post, you start to really shape it. And I think it's exciting because to me, that's when the movie starts telling me also what it needs to be. I have to start becoming a listener too. And some of the things that I might love and I just feel like, oh God, it's got to be in the movie. Some of those things fall away because the movie just doesn't need that. And so you get to start listening to the movie. And John had a great ear to that also, and was able to help, guide things with me, and just did a fantastic job bringing the movie to life.
How much did sound come into bringing the film to life for you? I know you talk about like peeling things away as you get to the cut that you actually want to see. How much the sound factor there?
Well, sound's a huge, huge part of any movie. I mean, it really is just a whole other character in the film. That's kind of a silent, part of it. Maybe the sound is silent. No, but I mean, it's extremely important, especially in a horror comedy. We're trying to create moments that really feel like horror moments. We're trying to set the tension, and we're trying to create these moments that, score wise, feel, again, evoking original scores. You want the big strings from these type of horror films. You want, if you're doing The Stuff, or what we called, or what was the Substance, was very electronic. So we were kind of delving into that world, and it became a process of going through that with my composer and really exploring a gauntlet of horror films and how the music was making you feel tonally. And then on top of that, you're also trying to figure out the equation as to how do you also use that in a way to elevate the comedy and to deliver jokes. And so it becomes, experimental in some ways, but it's just fantastic. And then when you get into the actual mix of the movie, it's very technical. There's a lot going on in these films, from big, huge gags to stunts to, very tense horror build-up moments that lead us to a joke. So all those things require, different sounds, from the score to the sound design. There's lots of tricks that sound allows you to elevate the whole, experience of a movie. So it's an exciting part of the process.
I know there's a nod to White Chicks. You said you all had to fight for it to see make the final cut in Scary Movie. Why did you have to fight for it? And what was it like for you and Marlon to work together on one of his more classic roles?
Yeah, well, that was, that's something that we had come up with early on. But at first we were like, there's no way we're going to get all the legality out of the way, because that's owned by a different studio. And that was, I think that was Revolution and Sony that did White Chicks. So there's a lot of, I think, red tape that had to be kind of worked out and papered. But that was why we have a fantastic producer, Rick Alvarez, and a team of lawyers and Miramax and all those guys. They were on it. And they were through that process. It was a little long, but they ended up working out an amazing opportunity to get Tiffany into the movie. And then it just became about actually capturing that moment, which was a challenge because, White Chicks is iconic, and we really wanted to make sure that Marlon looked and felt like Tiffany. And to do it at the end of The Substance was a challenge too, because that's like a big visual effects shot. So, it was just something that we thought would be a huge kind of surprise. And especially with everyone asking for White Chicks 2 for the last decade. It was just something that was exciting that we thought would be a huge Easter egg for people when they went and saw this movie, and also something they probably never saw coming. And so that was exciting to get in the film.
Now, Scary Movie had a huge theatrical release at the box office early this summer. This is significant as more films are released directly to streaming. So, having worked with companies such as Netflix on 2 of your previous films with Marlon, what was it like directing a project with such a large and traditional premiere for a company like Paramount?
Oh, it was fantastic. It was both my streaming films with Netflix were great, experiences. I had a blast making both Naked and Sextuplets. But I started off my career making theatrical films with Haunted House and Haunted House 2 and 50 Shades. And so it was so good to get back to, making a movie that was going to be in theaters. There's just really nothing like it. Just the feeling of being able to go to a theater and buy a ticket and sit in the back with, 100 people that are complete strangers and watch them watch your movie. It's just fantastic. It's just such a cool experience, especially with comedy, because instantly if it's working or it's not. 'Cause if they're not laughing, you're like, oh God. But luckily enough, Scary Movie was packed with jokes and a lot of people were laughing and having a great time. But it was just fantastic to be able to, know that Scary Movie was this franchise that had such a huge presence in pop culture, and that Paramount and Miramax wanted to bring it back in such a big way. And as we were shooting the movie, they were just getting more and more excited every day, watching dailies going, oh my God, I can't believe you guys went there. Oh my God, I can't believe you guys did this. And that was inspiring these really fun marketing ideas where they're like, well, you guys did this, so we're going to go hotbox, Times Square in New York City. That's going to be fantastic. And it was really just a great synergistic kind of, experience that we were able to do together.
All right. Now, Mike, we're short on time, but before we go, I have one last intricate question. What's your favorite Scary Movie?
Well, I would have to say right now, Barbarian is up there with one of my favorite Scary movies. Yeah, that movie, Zach did his thing in that movie. I didn't see any of it coming, and he constantly had me questioning who and was the bad guy, if this character was being honest, if it wasn't being honest. And then I found myself just letting go and going, I am just on a ride. I don't know where this movie's going, but I'm enjoying it. So that's one of my favorite films of the last few years.
All right. Well, Michael, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us. I'm Miss Reagan here with Poxy and Leonard, and we've just finished speaking with director Michael Tiddes about his work on the latest Scary Movie. We'll be right back to say goodbye right after these messages. Interested in television or movies?
Then check out The Ghost of Hollywood for the best in cinema-related podcast at theghostofhollywood.com or wherever you get your podcast.
Welcome back to The Ghost of Hollywood. I'm Miss Reagan here with Poxy. That wasn't cringy or anything.
Hey, man. Come on, Reagan. I mean, I remember when the first Scary Movie came out and everyone on Earth was like, voila, saying it all the time. It was like the 6-7 of 1999.
I'm gonna ignore you now. Anyways, where were we? Okay,
Voila.
right. We'd like to thank Michael Tiddes for joining us tonight to discuss his new film, Scary Movie, which is the first installment in over a decade and combined with Wayans' long-awaited return to the franchise.
Yep. So get out your party supplies because it's time to get down with Smokey and the gang again, baby. Also, shout out to Simon and Lynn. They keep bringing the heat with every new segment, and their voices are changing a lot too.
They've both definitely come down a few octaves for sure. Did you see the end of Polgastari the other night?
Yo, I fell asleep upright, I must confess.
The end is ridiculous.
Why?
The monster, he eats the little girl, and then he blows up and she lives somehow.
That sounds like one of those deep allegorical films you're into, Reagan.
Huh?
What? No, that's wrong? Alright, well, I tried.
No, you didn't.
I did try, Reagan.
Yeah, whatever. Thanks to all of you out there for listening to this episode. It's you who keep us going, and we always appreciate the support as the years continue to roll by. We'd also like to thank our sponsors at KBOO 90.7 FM in Portland, Oregon. They're listener-supported community radio, so check out their website at kboo.fm and learn about the donation process, the latest drives, and how you can get involved in community radio.
You can also visit our website at theghostofhollywood.com for all the latest information and episodes, and pick up one of those cool hoodies we have available on there while you're at it. Yeah, because, somebody needs to. And that'll wrap things up for episode 51, right here on The Ghost of Hollywood. I'm Poxy Leonard here with Miss Reagan, and until next time,
Good morning and good night.
good night.